has gone 7 minutes after the hour, 6 o'clock, and it's a very good evening to you. Welcome to our broadcast this evening, brought to you courtesy of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, hand in hand with Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS. My name is Karabalance Stolwana Sabapedi Le Matebele. Ke thabela go ba le wena motheletši mo kgasong ya rena ya bošegong bja legono yona o itlišetšwa ke ba ga Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, mmogo le kgoro ya toka le tšweletšopele ya molaotheo. There's the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. And yeah, we're going to be looking forward to an awesome show this evening, really. And as you know, that last week we did not have a show. We took a bit of a rest. Everybody went on holiday. So last week we did not have a show. My camera people are quite happy about that. I'm not. And trying to do the show by myself, but it did not work really. so I'm quite excited that we're back again, and we're going to be doing this show for you. And this time around, we're talking about an issue that you will probably been hearing about, and it's happening around you, and you actually don't know what it entails and what the nitty-gritties thereof. And this evening, we're going to bring you up to speed in terms of exactly what we're talking about. So hang 10. Our guests this evening, as we always do, we do have a guest or two, and today, this evening is not different, is no different at all. We've got Charmaine Mabuza, and she's the chairperson of the SA Board for Sherriff, and I've given you a clue in terms of what we're going to be talking about this evening. It's a very good evening to you, Charmaine. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Garava, and good evening to all the listeners, and thank you for having us on your show today.
There we go. And she's not all by herself, really. And he's the sheriff in Pretoria Central. Taka, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, sir.
Morena, thank you so much for having me in the studio.
All right, there we go. So, I'm we welcome all those languages. So if you do want to engage us in the language of your choice, we would love to hear from you. As I always say, that South Africa is a versatile country, so we definitely would love to hear from you. 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. That's the number to dial if you want to chat to us this evening. I would love to hear some of the questions that you're having. Otherwise, you can hook us up on Facebook at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. If you're a Twitter person and you would like to tweet us, hey, go for it. Twitter handle at DOJCD_ZA, at DOJCD_ZA. And that's our Twitter handle. 0123488. 0800, I beg your pardon, 0800 142 446. That's our telephone number. So, what exactly are we talking about? You're probably wondering this evening. All right, this evening we're talking about the issue study sheriffs or sheriffs in South Africa. We're going to unpack what their roles are, their duties as well, to educate. We would like to bring ourselves up to speed in terms of the rights of the citizens in dealing with sheriffs. Probably you have encountered before in your life a sheriff, or maybe you will in the future. I would like to bring you up to speed in terms of your rights as far as dealing with them. The role of the South African Board for Sheriffs, which Charmaine represents this evening. We're going to be touching a little bit on that as well. And how about we highlight the importance and the successes of transforming the sheriff's profession? Wow. Now, this is going to be a big one. And we'll get to hear about that. So, let's talk. Charmaine, let's talk about the sheriffs. Who are these people, Lapemzansi?
Thank you so much once again for having us. Firstly, just to outline who are the sheriffs. Sheriffs are appointed by the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. They are independent and impartial officers of the court. They have specific acts to comply with, and magistrates and Supreme Court rules of the court to comply with. And they're actually regulated by the South African Board for Sheriffs. And there are a number of commitments that we expect as a board from a sheriff at a level to level.
And normally we hear about issues like jurisdictions. This is not within a jurisdiction. And I wonder if the same applies to the sheriffs as well, the Tataga. Maybe you can jump into that one then. Something else on the sheriffs in terms of where they can operate and where they cannot operate, because your title here stands for you're the sheriff in the Pretoria Central.
Certainly,
Probably there's quite a few of them.
No, certainly. Look, a sheriff is appointed for a very specific area, which is called a specific jurisdiction, and he cannot go beyond that jurisdiction. Just like in any other, situation in the country where you have parameters within which to act. The sheriff is appointed to act in a specific area, and he cannot, jump over that area. If he jumps that area, then he is out of order. He is not performing his duties in terms of the law.
We're talking about the appointments of these sheriffs. Would you like to add something, Shemaine?
Yes, I was just going to add to what Dr. Sibova has said. There's 384 magisterial districts in South Africa, of which 50 are sub-districts and 90 are branch courts and 230 are periodic courts. So those are the jurisdictions that sheriffs have within, to operate in. Yes.
Now, these jurisdictions, why are they there? Is it because we want to control, or is it because we want to make the job easier, that we don't find one sheriff in Gauteng, the very next day they are down in the Eastern Cape and back again, go Free State? Why are they given specific areas in which they need to operate in? Is there a specific reason, Dr. Swoga?
Sure. There has to be limitations. Look, the responsibility of a sheriff, is very huge, and it cannot be exercised in the whole of the country. It has got to have specific limitations. You have limitations so that you can give quality service to the people. Otherwise, if I'm in Pretoria Central and then I've got to go to Johannesburg,
right,
then I've got to go to Vereeniging, then I've got to go to Durban and that sort of thing. It is too much for me. So the country, just like the courts, Charmaine has just recently said something about the magisterial districts.
Right.
Every sheriff in the country is appointed to a specific magisterial area. Obviously, the magisterial areas are quite huge. Within a magisterial area, you can have one or more sheriffs, depending on how busy that magisterial area is. If you take, for example, the whole area of Pretoria, Pretoria has got about 8 to 10 sheriffs because of the enormity of the work that is carried out by the sheriff.
Right. Okay. 0800 142 446. 0800 142 446. You probably are going to laugh at me with what I'm going to ask you now, but that's okay. Because it's a question that came to my mind, and I thought maybe should I ask it or maybe should I not. But maybe it's appropriate for me to ask it because I might not be the only person in South Africa who's thinking like that. I grow on.
Yeah.
Let's not confuse the word sheriff and sheriff in Wigitsabang. Or are they the same? Sarah, and then you can know But on a serious note, when you come across the word sheriff, in this instance, what we're talking about this evening, is it different to the sheriff that we the one in on TV, or there's a new sheriff in town, the type of thing? Yes, that one, or the one with guns blazing. I know some people are laughing like, Karawa, how could you ask a question like that? But look, I'm telling you right now, there are people that could possibly be thinking or asking that question. I don't really get the differences of those two. Just very quickly, and then,
Well, there is a major difference in what we see in the movies and what in the American context versus the South African context, and what the sheriff has done. Firstly, the work description is very different in the sense that we as the South African sheriffs are specifically just meant to do a certain aspect of the entire process in terms of the legal process that is what the court order. In other words, we are executing only the orders of the court.
All right.
And the ones in the movies, you see them with the guns and they're like a policeman, which is then gives a different perception of what sheriffs are really. So that's fundamental difference. We are the officers of the court executing the instructions or the orders of the court here in South Africa. We don't do the cross-the-board policing like in American movies as such.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, look, you can say that a sheriff is a civil law officer of the court. When you watch the movies, you see the sheriff with a big head, with dark glasses and with guns and big boots,
driving
and that sort of thing. It's a completely different sheriff. If we are in South Africa, we talk about a civil person representing the judiciary in the country, carrying out his duties in terms of the law of the country.
19 after 6, 0800 142 446. Keep those social media questions coming through on our Facebook page at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and otherwise you can hook us up on Facebook as well. I beg your pardon, on Twitter as well. DOJCD_ZA, DOJCD_ZA. If you've just joined the show, welcome to it. We're 19 minutes into it, and our guest this evening, Rachel Alimesha Main Babuza, and she's the chairperson of the South African Board for Sherrifs, as well as Ndatata Kasaboka, and he's the sheriff in Pretoria I beg your pardon, Pretoria Central. I'm very much exposed to Pretoria East, hence as my tongue slipped there. The sheriff in Pretoria East in terms of auctioning houses and all of that stuff, and which is one part that I would like us to talk about.
Sure.
Very interesting one, in fact, when it comes to property management and property and so forth. So I'm looking forward to that one there as well. All right, there's a question from Utifen, and he wants to know, this one is a very interesting one because I always hear the term or the phrase, "you have been served." And that comes when the sheriff is now in contact with the person that needs to serve, or that need to serve, and that phrase, normally I hear it once the signature's been put on the document or on the receipt type of thing. Now, defender wants to know, how does it work in terms of the absentia of the person that needs to be served? So if I get in the egg and if I get pussy or something like that, or how important is it, or do you have to even serve hand to hand? How does it work, that process of serving?
I will just take it briefly. According to the rules of the court, you can affix a process. A process. Let me give you a typical example. You find that a person has gone overseas for months, or he's deliberately evading the sheriff. He locked the door. He's not there. So there is certain processes that you can affix to the door, but we discourage that. We like to encourage our sheriffs to try and serve in person. For instance, the rules of the court, in a case of a divorce where it changes the status of a person, they have to serve in person in such instances. But there are instances, yes, where definitely you cannot get hold of the defender, if I may explain it that way, and they would have to get through an affixing, but we really try and discourage that in that case, and maybe I'll get you, Saboka.
Sure. You see, as Shabin has indicated, under normal circumstances, the rule is that when you serve a process, when you serve a court order, you have got to serve it specifically on a person.
Right.
And if you go there for the first time, maybe for the second time or so, and you find that the person is not there,
right,
you have a duty to make sure that the message arrives home. And what you then do in terms of the authorization of the rules of court, then you can place that order of court either on the wall or on the fence, or if there's a post box, in the post box and that sort of thing. Now, what you then have to do, you have to respond as quickly as you possibly can. You see, because sometimes people pick up, the order of court, they see it and say, no, they did not serve it on me. You see, but the court allows that if you have made an attempt and you don't find a person, then you have a duty to pin the order on the wall or before the door.
Are those people served when it's like that?
Certainly.
Yes.
Are they served?
Yes. Certainly.
But then issue a signature, it's an guy, because as far as I know, and I'm speaking under correction, and probably the listeners are asking the same thing as well, we need to sign, I have received it, or we don't have to sign.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, because In the return of service, what we call a return of service that we have to give, you would indicate that I went there day 1, I went there day 2, this person was not there on such and such a time. So there's a track record of how many times you've made that attempt, and therefore you can then proceed to do that. Because, for instance, Karabi, you'll get people that can see the sheriff through the window, but they just simply would not receive the document.
So basically, they don't want to stretch their hand to receive.
Stretch their hand, which would have made it much more easier, and they would be explained their rights, and it's not a process. But given how difficult they would make it for a sheriff to execute their duties, then we are able to affix it to the door. It is in terms of the court.
Karawa, can I expatiate a bit? And
Yes,
it's not only that. You see, we have a duty to make sure that the court processes have been served. Sometimes if you deliberately avoid the service, there are other processes which take place after that. For example, if we are satisfied that we have not been able to serve you, then we, at a certain point, we go to the newspapers. You know, we publish in the newspapers that there has been a judgment against you. You see, you can pick it up at that point if you did not pick it up at the first point. In some instances, very rare instances, you do what is called a dictal citation.
Right.
You go to a place, you don't find a person, maybe he's not in the area or it's not in the country, then you go to the newspapers, then you publish that there is an order which has been issued by the court against that particular person. But the length and short of it is that it is possible you can place an order of court on the wall, in front of the door, or in the post box.
Wow, okay. There you go, Defender. Hope that answered your question. I've got a Facebook question, and thank you so much. Those Facebook questions are coming through. And this one is from John McMillan. Is a sheriff a full-time employee, a full-time official of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development? Now, what qualifications is needed for one to become a sheriff? I would love to know that myself. I think I'm in the wrong career. And thanks, John. I really appreciate that. John was going to listen on the radio. Thank you so much to Radio Alpha for having helped John to really get this message. I really appreciate it. Coming up next, I'm going to be telling you about the 25th anniversary celebration. So don't go away. We're going to be dealing with that. Okay, let's deal with the questions. The first one, Yamutratupa. Presentation, but they will tell you. I mean, there's food in the studio, that tells you already. I hope my producers are not going to kill me for that. But a presentation is everything.
Sure.
But when you're presenting food, the way you present it is everything. Mutatupa says, uniform of it. How important is it? Why don't we have uniforms? Mhlambe, he would like the sheriffs to be in uniform so that maybe for easy identification of them of some sort.
Well, look, Karabo, and I think that's a good question from Mhlathupa. The first thing is that when a sheriff approaches any member of the society, he must look decent. He must be presentable, That's the first thing. It may be that he will not have a specific uniform like the nurses or like the police and that sort of thing. But the crucial thing that the sheriff must have is an identity document. Every sheriff, whenever he approaches an individual in the society, he must produce an identity document which has been issued to all the sheriffs by the South African Board for Sheriffs. And I'm sure the chairperson of the board can briefly expatiate on that.
Shami?
No, correct. We issue out identification badges to all our sheriffs, and they're also trained how to approach their the members of public, whether through the language that they would explain their rights, and in the manner to encompass human rights and dignity. So those are important to us, the interface between our sheriffs and the members of the public.
All right. You see, legally, and Mango always says, when you're dealing with legal issues, there are always technicalities, and one needs to be very careful. He always likes mentioning that. I'm going to throw something, and I want to see, right. Now, if a sheriff comes, do I have the right to turn them away and say, this is a disrespect to my dignity, to my person? I will not accept any documentation that's been given out by yourself because of the state of soberness or drunkenness that you're in. can I do something like that? Can I turn a sheriff away based on that, which I just said now, and many other reasons?
Firstly, it's very important the way what we tell our members of the public, because what we do know is that we don't want to have an untested matter to say I turned the person away because they were drunk. However, if a member of the public is able to tell us of the behavior of that sheriff or that deputy sheriff, and I say to raise that complaint to the board,
Right.
we deal with each one of those complaints. And if any rudeness, any way of, it's not just a matter of drunkenness. The reason why I'm cautious to say about drunkenness, and I'm saying because members will simply say that person was drunk, whereas it's not the case. It's a very subjective, and we've got to subject that person to a disciplinary hearing or an investigation. So it becomes a big issue. But yes, if there's any disruptive or ill-mannered or behavior that is not in accordance to our code of conduct, because we've got a code of conduct which regulates how sheriffs and the deputy sheriffs should behave. And every one of our sheriffs have been trained in accordance and what to expect in terms of the rules and our code of conduct.
All right, awesome. 6:30 today is 0800 142 446. 0800 142 446. Twitter handle DOJCD_ZA. Facebook, it's going to be at the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Well, you know what, Karabo? Normally, when the sheriff serves a summons, it's just as bad as it is coming from the court. You see, you don't want to create confusion to the members of the public, and then you put the summon in an envelope. You take the summon as is and you present it to the person. That person can there and then immediately read it and understand what it is all about. You see, so we normally don't put the summonses in the envelope.
As you've received it from the court, that's how it's going to be presented.
Yes, yes.
All right, absolutely awesome. You know, with my things, with my possessions, with what I say it's my assets. That is we created that. I don't even need to repeat that question.
Well, you know what, firstly, there are two processes of bringing the person before the courts. The first one is a criminal process or it's a civil process. Now, your question falls within the realm of the criminal process. We as sheriffs, we deal with matters which are civil matters. Now, but to help you with your concern, when you are arrested with dagga, that dagga is kept safe and it is going to be produced before the magistrate, before the court. You see, as an exhibit of what you have been arrested with or what you have been arrested for. It's exactly the same as the ship that you are referring to. If you steal a ship, that ship will be brought before the court as an exhibit. So there's no way in which they can go and take something else from somewhere and bring it there. They will put the thing and in the way that they found it in you. If it was in a paper bag, they will keep that paper bag. If it was in a paper, they will keep it in the paper. Obviously, if they take it out of your pockets, they will keep it safe somewhere.
Thank you so much. And that is Saboka 0800 142 446. 0800 142 446. Tulani wants to know South African courts and juvenile sentences. You know, it's a pity that Tulani missed one of the shows that we had where we were talking about Child Act. And but I'm not going to go into that. Would you like to jump in, Charmaine? Because it's got to do with the whole Child Act and how juveniles are sentenced and so forth.
Well, firstly, I just want to pick up from what he has said about the Legal Aid Board. I think it's an important imperative of our Constitution about access to justice for everybody.
Right.
And it is a way to ensure that everybody is heard, and even if you can't afford a lawyer in layman's term, at least you can get one through the Legal Aid Board. That's the first point I'd like to point out there. And I'll ask Mr. Seboko to take up the Child Protection Act. But before that, Garabo, there was a question that was raised by one of our listeners. What do you have to do to be a sheriff, and what training do you necessarily have to do? Maybe I can also take that.
Yeah.
Firstly, the Act is very clear. It prescribes what you need to do to become a sheriff. It is clear that, firstly, you've got to be fit and proper. In other words, you've conducted yourself, you're historical, you've got no criminal records, and you have to have a minimum standard of a standard 10, and we're busy prescribing further requirements together with the board and the Department of Justice. Over and above that, you have to undergo certain training which the board has prescribed, which is really job specific, which has been designed by the board to enable sheriffs to become sheriffs and operate as sheriffs.
Right.
And the other question that was asked, are we part of the justice system, or are we employed full-time by the Department of Justice? No, we are independent, impartial officers of the court. In other words, we operate our independent little officers on our own, not linked up or reporting to the justice as in justice, or get paid in terms of the payroll. However, we work very closely with the different courts. For instance, we are part of the committees as sheriffs, so sheriffs have to be part of that committee, which does case flow management, and that's the role of the sheriff, and how we position the sheriff as the South African Board for Sheriffs.
Okay. Then there was another question just before you answer.
Sure.
The other one, yeah, how long does it take?
Yes.
Yeah, let's tackle that one. How long does it take?
You know, Puti, there has been quite a few questions. One was from Puti, and then the other one was from Kang.
Right.
Then you had this one from Johannes. Now,
That's
Puti wanted to find out, what happens before the sheriff can attach the property. So in all fairness to her, there are processes before the sheriff can come into the picture. You see, the first thing what normally happens, and I must say up front that these are not the responsibilities of the sheriff, but the processes that must take place before the sheriff can come onto the scene is that, if a person owes or has got any obligation that he has not satisfied, the opponent will first send a letter of demand, to that person. And if the person then fails to respond to the letter of demand, the affected person goes to court, and then when he gets to court, the court gives or grants him a summons, an order. You see, and once the court has issued an order, then it goes to the sheriff for the sheriff to go and serve, that order. Now, the Puti, if he gets an order from court through the sheriff, she must satisfy that order. If she does not satisfy that order and pay, if he has got to pay, then the sheriff moves to the next stage, which is the attachment of her assets. If the assets have been attached and still she does not respond, then the sheriff can then remove those assets. And I'm sure Charmaine can come in there.
Just at that point, when the member of the public or the defendant, when they receive their first summon, that's why we always encourage the members of the public to not run away from a sheriff, because they would know that we will tell them, respond within 7 days, and in that period you can go and make a settlement in terms of the date. You can say, go and make arrangements, I'm going to pay it over 3 months. You still have an opportunity at that point of time. Now, what people tend to do at that point, they need to babalega, and that's when the matter doesn't get resolved. At that point, you still have the leeway in terms of the law to still settle and make arrangements. Because if you let it go, then it gets to the point of execution, where we've got to take away now your microwave to satisfy, or your TV, or your fridge now to satisfy the worth of that writ. And that's where the members of the public need to be aware of and look at that gap and make sure that they really respond to sheriffs so that they can settle their matters at an early stage rather than a late stage, because once an execution happens, it becomes tougher, it becomes harder negotiations for you as a member of the public, or it becomes too late.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
All right. That the Kang also came in with a question there.
Sure, Kang wanted to know, how long must a person wait for the sheriff to serve the court process and that sort of thing. In terms of the code of conduct of the sheriffs, as soon as the sheriff has got an order from court which he has got to serve, he must serve it immediately without any undue delay.
Right.
So all the sheriffs know that that is the expectation from them. If there is, an unnecessary delay, Kang can complain either to the magistrate or to the South African board for sheriffs. But what normally happens, there must be a distinction. There are certain processes which have got to be served on an urgent basis. And Kang must indicate that this matter is very urgent. He was talking about death in the family and that sort of thing. Clearly, that's an urgent matter. Now, the turnaround generally of the role of the sheriff in the process, it should be about 3 to 4 days. The document comes to the sheriff if it's a normal matter.
Right.
That matter should not take much time in the sheriff's office. It should at most take about 3 to 4 days.
Right.
If it's urgent, then they must indicate that we need to do it today, here and now.
Okay. Then there's a Facebook message that came in a bit earlier from Blessing Mahlasela, and he was not quite happy with what he was told by one of the sheriffs, or what he heard perhaps a sheriff has done, which is an issue where a sheriff has forced, well, it actually happened to them. A sheriff has forced them to put a reminder on the cell phone of the date of appearance go court. He was not happy with that. Are they supposed to do that? Isn't there something that they must issue as a reminder, or are there means of having, once you've actually served, and then you can remind the people that you served, your court date is coming in 2 days or in a day? I'm just trying to think, because I think this is where the question is going.
No, Karabo, there isn't. The law doesn't make provisions for a sheriff to remind a person. Once the document has been served, it's the person's responsibility, because there's many things that can, there's many permutations once you've received it. You may settle the debt, you may oppose,
So it's really up to you.
It's really up to you,
Right.
to how you take it from there onwards. So I'm not certain in terms of what the reminder in this case relates to, and if anybody has forced anybody, if they've got the details, once again I invite them to please give us the full details and lodge a complaint, because we will analyze it in that context.
All right. Okay.
Sure. No, I think the chairperson has captured it quite well. Sometimes I think the sheriffs put themselves in an unnecessary trouble, bending backwards to try to assist a member of the public, to say, hey, put this thing in your cell phone so that when the day comes, you should not forget you've got to be appearing in court. It has got nothing. It's not the business of the sheriff. Once he has served you, and the dates are on the paper in terms of when must you go to court, which court, and that sort of thing. But
isn't it going an extra mile, Shem? I mean,
sure.
There's a guy saying, look, you've been saved, bro, but to make sure things don't go out of the way, your court date is appearing on. I would suggest you put it on your phone.
Precisely.
That's why I was saying, but I'm not sure the context in which this reminder was given to.
Well, the person actually wanted to find out if there are any means that you guys can do from your side, or the sheriffs can do from their side, instead of them saying put a reminder. They're the ones who are perhaps sending a reminder via email of some sort.
No, it's very different. Remember, certain offices once have thousands of processes, but once that order has been done, as I said to you, there's various permutations. You may find that they settle even before that court date,
right?
There's many things that can happen before that court date. So it's a very difficult process to manage in itself about reminders. I suppose the sheriff was saying, please remember this date. You must appear in court.
Yeah, I know of this particular. Well, I've heard about a similar similar story where parents have passed on, leaving a house behind, no particular will that's been put in place to say it belongs to so whoever. Siblings are in war about the house, and so those cases, so they're a bit personal, and I wouldn't want to discuss those on air, but we'll definitely give Johannes his number to the relevant people that can deal with that matter. All right, again, he was the one who was talking about the interim issue.
Look, Karabo, I think the questions that Johannes have raised are not strictly speaking, the sheriff's, challenges or problems, if you like. I think they are more of a social nature. He was asking about, theft in the house.
Right.
Well, that's at the extreme beginning of the whole process of the justice system, because the sheriff comes right at the end. If there's theft by his niece or his nephew in the house and that sort of thing, and he reports the matter and that sort of thing, maybe at the end of the process, that's when the sheriff can come. But where he is now, that's not the role and function and responsibility of the sheriff.
Or maybe
now,
just to add a bit of color in terms of even referring to the other shows that we've had. In this instance, the sheriff would the sheriff possibly come at a time where longer, for instance, that the Johannes goes and lays an interdict the orders given. This is where the sheriff comes, where the interdict is. Would I be correct to say that? All right. Okay. So I want that the Johannes say where you are now, in terms of what we're talking about today, we're not yet more the sheriff dealing involved. Where they're going to be involved is maybe when you take further actions where longer an order of some sort, whether it be a restraining order or whatever, but once an order has been given against somebody, this is where they will come in as sheriffs to come and serve that particular order to that person. So I'm glad that we've tackled that one in that way. All right, so we are 1 minute in the red, and it doesn't look like we've got callers. Would you like to maybe say parting words, Charmaine?
Yes, I just once again would like to invite the members of the public, if they've got any issues regarding sheriffs, they must feel free to contact our board, which is 0214 426 0557 is the telephone number, or the contact or email is contact, which is CONTACT at sherriffs.org.za. And they must know and be assured that we as a board will always look at these complaints in the best possible way. We've got what we call a trust fund, which we will we actually take care of incidents if sheriffs have embezzled members of the public's funds. There's a whole program as the board that we look at from a public's interest perspective.
Thank you so much, I mean, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Karabo. Maybe in conclusion, I should say thank you to colleague Dumisani, for having enlightened the listeners about what the sheriff is all about and that sort of thing.
Oh, yes.
I think what is important is that the members of the public and the community must understand and know what the role of the sheriff is. When the sheriff approaches you as a member of the public, firstly you must know that he is an impartial messenger of the court. He's in the middle. He doesn't take any sides whatsoever. So
don't shoot the messenger.
Yes, you've got to treat him with respect. You've got to listen to him. If you don't understand, you've got to ask questions, and once he has explained the questions, then you have got to respond accordingly.
Right. Thank you so much. That's the voice here, Dr. Seboka. He's the sheriff in Pretoria East. As I beg your pardon?
Pretoria Central.
Yeah, no. I must move, ne? All right. He's the sheriff in Pretoria Central, and Dr. Seboka, as well as Mesha Mabu, the chairperson of the South African Board of for Sherriff. We'd like to thank you so much for taking time to be with us. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Carol.
All right. Thank you so much to all the radio stations that have partnered with us this evening. We really, really appreciate that. But just before we go, I just want to tell you about something that's very, very important that's going to be happening. The Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Michael Masuta, will deliver a keynote address. This is going to be happening on the at the 25th anniversary celebration of the Office of the Family of the Advocate in Kimberley on Friday, the 2nd of October. Now, this thing is going to be happening tomorrow. So if you're living around the Kimberley area, please note this. Now, the Minister will be accompanied by the Premier of the Northern Cape, Ms. Sylvia Lucas, MEC of Social Development, Mr. Mkoli Sokacha, and non-governmental organizations. A few of them will be there as well. Now, the primary role of the Family Advocate's Office to assist parents or parties to reach an agreement on disputes regarding care, custody, and contact of children through unbiased mediation. Now, the Northern Cape Office of the Family Advocate handles most of the cases relating to custody and care of the children. Now, members of the surrounding communities will also have the opportunity to interact with the Minister, with the Premier, and the MEC at this particular imbizo. Now, for more details, as I said, tomorrow, 10 o'clock is going to be happening. You're probably wondering exactly where this thing is going to be happening. Well, the Greenpoint High School go Kimberley. Greenpoint High School Kimberley tomorrow at 10 o'clock. It's going to be happening there. But hey, look, if you want more details, Junior is waiting for your call on 079-192-9194. Let me repeat that number again. It's 079-192-9124. Otherwise, you can email Junior. Go jkotu, J-K-O-T-U, jkotu at justice.gov.za. 10 minutes after 7 o'clock, it's time for me to say goodbye. Thank you so much to my fellow colleagues who've made the show and absolutely kicked something. It's Zoe on camera 1 as well as Tabs on camera 2. These are the guys that are making it possible that this show be published on, what do you call it now? What do you call it though? YouTube, there we go. All right, so those two people coming from our video unit, we really appreciate you guys. Prareji sitting on telephones, Stonito making sure that the connection between our studios and the satellite and the studio, your studio as a radio station, is one that's unbreakable. So Stonito handling our technical connection there and our sound, as well as Komodo making sure Facebook messages coming through to our side, we're getting them and we're responding to them. Today, by the way, we just laid our cousin to rest, and Bamaluka, we are with you in these trying times that you are facing. So thank you so much for everybody to having come through to be part of this show. All right, let's sign off. Thank you so much. Lawrence, thank you as well, making sure that every show happens as well. Before get right, signing off. Let's meet again the next week, Thursday at 6 o'clock.